Dr. Jeffrey, good morning to you.
Good
Hello.
morning.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, but I'm trying to figure out which language I'm supposed to click on the interpretation, English or French.
Oh, I don't know. Would you like to speak in French with me today?
Well, my French is a little weak, you know. I can say things like souffle or oui or things like that, but my
Soufflé.
French is not so good. So I'll select English, right?
Indeed, we will speak in English, and then Nikki, who is with us today, on Thursday, she's translating everything from English to French for our French communities.
Okay, very good.
Yes, so in English, and we do also have Celine. Hello, Celine, with us. This is the little bird, and Celine is the voice of our audience, meaning she's the one who is taking care of sharing the links, your social medias and your websites, and giving us the questions of our audience. Dr. Jeffrey Fannin, thank you that you're with us again. Yes.
Yeah, my pleasure to be here, Sophie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we had a beautiful conversation last time with Shona, about what you created together as a research, building a bridge between science and alternative therapies.
Right. Yeah, it was a big project. I'm still processing a lot of the data. We had so many things that we had to measure and break it all down and put it together. So I'll be this whole next week putting things together. And then right after that, I have to get ready for being on another program that it's called Superhuman, Making the Invisible Visible. And it's
I love that.
yeah, it's a great movie, and we're taking a couple of the scientists that are in the movie and myself, and we're going to be talking about a project that I've been working on for a couple of years now, Vibra Vision, and how people can put bandages over their eyes and a blindfold on top of that and drive go-karts. And this phenomenon has been happening around the world, and so we're going to be explaining how that is possible, you know. And so I've got a lot of brain map data from the last 2 years of people who are very accomplished in doing that.
This is very fascinating field of yours, and we really thank you to be with us today on the Summit Healing the Family Tree, because this is such an honor. And for the people who may have not seen, the interview of last day, I will give a little bit about you, and then that we can engage the conversation also. So, Dr. Jeffrey Fannin, you hold a PhD in psychology and also an MBA and a Bachelor of Science degree in mass communications. You are the founder of Thought Genius, and you can explain to us what it is about your mission, what's the point about your mission. Your website is very well done. We can see a lot of interviews you've already done, but behind the interviews, there are a lot of research, as you say, data, interpreting, building bridges between the data and the facts. And you also certified as HeartMath, that you can also talk to us about that, because this is also a very interesting mission.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. One of the things that I'd like to talk about this morning, is the fact that we are all vibrational beings living in a vibrational universe. And I have some very interesting slides from my research to talk about coherence, because in changing things, I want to share some of that research. And one of them deals with the HeartMath device and helping you see exactly what goes on with individuals that I've worked with. And I think people will find that very interesting, because coherence is such a large part of healing and being able to be balanced. And I'd like to spend some time talking about that today.
Oh yes, thank you very much. With pleasure. And Dr. Fannin, we have with us right to me on my right side, we have Juliette Roumaillag. She's the violinist. Juliette is a well-known violinist. She's very talented, very gifted violinist, and she is with us for the previous interview right before. And do you allow us to ask you a question? Because I do have a chance to have this amazing, talented violinist. Can we ask you a question that we tend to figure out? Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Hello, it's a pleasure for me to meet you. Yes, in the previous interview, we talked about how easy it is to play when you use the desire and the intention. But if you use the will, if I can figure out what it is for a violinist to play with the will, you have to play something. It could be difficult. It is challenging. And if you use the will, you will have lots of targets and many things to combine to manage to play. If you use the intention, the desire, you feel that you've got everything inside, and you connect to a knowledge that you can't even figure out what is this knowledge, but you connect with it immediately, and then you play, and it's easy. It is effortless.
Yeah, you are right on there. I wrote about that in my book, Commanding the Power of Thought. And so if I can liken this to a study we did, we had over 60 energy healers in this study. And one was a giver, one was a receiver. And we were able to measure the energy between the person giving and the person receiving. Now, this instrument is called a Sputnik. And so it looks like a marble with a bunch of spikes around it, but it's measuring that energy. So the things that you're talking about with the violinist and so forth of tapping into that energy, we were able to measure. So I put a graph in my book, and with this device, it was taking a measure of the conductance of energy every 3 seconds. And so we had a huge amount of data because the protocol that we were working with was 90 minutes. And so when we graphed all of this out, and we found some very interesting things that we didn't really expect to find, but it was there. So we took people with different levels of intention, with different levels of focus and concentration from this study, and we graphed it in the book. And so every time it would take a reading of the energy that was going between the giver and the receiver, there would be this issue of coherence. And this is why I think coherence is such an important issue in discussing today. And I want to share some other things with you. But every time it would take a reading every 3 seconds, when there was a lack of focus, a lack of concentration, a lack of intention, that they were not connecting with the field. And so what we found in these 4 readings, that there was a space between the readings every 3 seconds. And the more spaces, the lack of coherence that was going on. So the person that had the most coherence increased the amount of energy over a lot of other people because they had focus, they had concentration, and they had the desire, like you're talking about, to stay focused in the moment and do what they were doing. And so we found higher energy, more coherence with people that were doing that than those people who were just kind of going through the motions. And I think that's a really nice scientific element of that. And people can see that in my book or on the website, thoughtgenius.com. You can actually download some of the graphics that are in the book. Because of cost, we had to print them in black and white, but the colors add a lot to that. So we put a free download on the website so people can download any of the illustrations or pictures in the book and see the coloration. So this graph that I'm talking about is available for anybody to download on the Thought Genius website.
Indeed, and on the website will be written directly in the chat today, so we'll pay attention to that. And yes, so
thank you very much.
Did that answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's marvelous that musicians are able to have that within themselves, to be able to tap into a higher source, and that energy and information that we know from astrophysics that is physically possible to do. And it's wonderful to hear that people who are musicians are able to tap in, and that's where that inner knowing and that, like you say, everything just flows. You're flowing with the energy, and that goes along with what Sean and I were talking about the other day, that all thoughts and energy are not destroyed. They're still out there in the field, and any of us have the ability to tap into that and bring it down, you know, when it's out here in the field. And one of the graphs that I have shows that it comes down through the crown chakra, through what we call the thalamic gate into the thalamus, and then it's distributed from cell to cell. So you have this coherence of energy between the brain and the body and our ability to do things. And that's very much what we find with the vibrovision people, why they're able to put, you know, bandages over their eyes and a blindfold on top of that, drive a go-kart, play video games, drop colored beanbags in their hand. I can tell you, it is the same universal principle.
Isn't it amazing?
It is. It is. Thank you very much. It's really.
It's fascinating, and also the beautiful thing is that Juliette Roumayac, she's also teaching to the children, and we were talking also that the children has this natural capacity to follow their guidance, of course, the guidance of a great teacher, and also that they learn with a kind of a natural capacity. You were explaining that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's very true, because this show that I'm going to be on at the end of the month here on the 27th, Superhuman Making the Invisible Visible, they find that this phenomenon is happening around the world, and children are very easily able to tap into that energy, and they don't know how they're doing it. It's just an innate process. So being able to teach children at a young age how to do things like that, you know, I must commend you, because just think what they're going to be like when they grow up to be adults.
Yes.
Yes, and this is why we had this also interesting moment of the conversation, talking how is it possible that a child with perhaps a difficulty like dyslexia, do we say dyslexia in English? Dyslexia, you know, having difficulties with right and left. How is it possible that the child having this difficulty at school, which is required to them to work 2 times more sometimes, but Juliette was explaining to us that when the child has an instrument of music in the hand, it's as if it was natural. It's not so painful.
It's very gratifying for them, because they can share their full potential with us, and they don't have to work so much to make it. They don't make so many efforts. It is effortless.
Exactly. You're talking about 2 different things. One is when you're looking at dyslexia, it is a function of the brain where you have too much delta and theta in the front part of the brain. When they're playing a musical instrument, they're using a different part of their brain to do that. And so they are vibrating different and getting out of their head, so to speak, and into that stream of energy. And especially if they are very interested in playing an instrument, that they're going to be able to focus and concentrate more than they normally would. And you probably see that with the children that you work with.
They have even more attention than in other kids, because it's a miracle for them.
Right.
It works.
Yeah,
And
well,
it's
they're just using a
different.
different mechanism, and that's why I have some slides that I want to talk
Okay.
about those
Yes,
those
thank you.
kinds of
Thank you.
issues and why coherence, becomes vitally important, and how people can train this coherence within themselves if it doesn't come naturally. But that's why children are able to learn languages so easily, is because they don't have a lot of these filters that we have as adults, and so they can learn languages, they can play musical instruments, they can do things because they are tapping into a completely different system.
Oh,
Right.
great. Thank you. It's so valuable to understand about that, and hopefully people can also listen to that, because we sometimes search the answer how to help these children, that they don't feel that learning is only a painful process. So it's a good message of hope.
Yeah, well, and adults can do it too. It's just a matter of using what we talked about earlier, an intention, and being able to keep your focus, be present in the moment. That as adults, we tend to be distracted way too much. All of these distractions that are going on around us. And so we may be paying more attention to that. And so we lose sight of the power that we have as an individual, being able to do more of that by tapping into the intention, focus, and concentration, being present in the moment.
Thank you so much. Indeed. You have the screen for you, Dr. Fannin, now?
Yes, if
And
do I have control to do that?
you have full
Okay.
control on the screen, Dr. Fannin. We are
Yeah,
all feeling for you.
great, thank you. What I really want to
Yes.
talk about is how I kind of stumbled into some of this stuff. Um, I was working with a young man of high school age, and he had focus and concentration problems, ADD, if you will. And so here on the left, we had done a brain map, and it's showing, if we look down here, it is beta activity, is thinking activity. And we had him on this regimen of, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit, NRF1, NRF2, and Axio. And 12 days, or let me back up just a little bit. And as he was, the parents were getting 2 and 3 calls a day from the school. He's acting out. He's not bringing in his homework. He's, being belligerent, things like that. So we put him on this regimen to open up the neural pathways in his brain. And 12 days later, we did this other map. Let me go to the next slide and just compare where his focus and concentration was lacking here on the left. And 12 days later, we saw this activity over here on the right. And in 25 years of doing this, I had never seen that before. And so it was in the green, it says that everything is in the normal range. Now, as I looked at that and I said, well, it must be the cap, it must be the data, it must be the equipment. Well, it all checked out. And so I began to look at it differently and look at it more from a quantum physics point of view. And so then I looked at his coherence. And so here on the left was the before, and you don't have to be a neuroscientist to figure that out, that all that blue and red means it's not working well. And over here on the right, after getting on this regimen of NRF1, NRF2, and Axio for 12 days, now it's in the normal range. And I looked at that and I said, how is that physically possible to do that? And so as I began to understand the elements of our cells and how they're working, now in the beginning for this individual, it really didn't cure his ADD, but it opened up his pathways to allow for more learning. And he was able to get tutors. And instead of getting D's and F's on his report card, by the end of the school year, he was getting A's and B's because it accelerated that. Now, I went beyond that and looked at another study here, and we were measuring this person's chakras and looking at this. And this is a 44-year-old man that had prostate cancer. And they're fairly aligned with the exception of this one here, and which was related to the cancer. We see the value up here is lower than the rest of them. This line that we see here is dealing with the normative database. So there are over 5,000 people in the normative database. So it was taking his demographics, male, female, left, right hand, and putting them, matching him up to see what it looked like. Now, 11 days later, we put him on the same regimen, NRF1, NRF2, and 11 days later, we saw this. And you can see that the energy here is all above the line and so forth. Now, if we compare those side by side, and we can see the difference there before and after. And so as I started to look at this, and we had him on a heart math regimen. And so he would clip this device on his ear. And let me do it this way.
So what a heart math regimen?
Well, heart math has been around for about 30 years. And so it's a device that you clip on your ear. You have an app on your phone. When you clip it on your ear, it is measuring your heart rate variability. So each of us have a difference in time from one heartbeat to the next, and it's creating the rhythm of the heart. And so as we looked at this, and you can see this was a little over a year ago that we did this study, January 31st, 2019, and it will show you if you're in low coherence, medium, or high coherence. And so we can see in the graph here that he wasn't doing so well. Down here in the blue and the red, he was losing his focus, and he could only get in high coherence 57% of the time. Well, then a few days later, on February 2nd, we took another reading, and every time he did a session, it would be recorded in the cloud so we could look at this. Now, his average coherence went from 1.5 down to 1.4. Oops, lost that. To 1.4. Then a few days later, he calls me. He says, "I think this thing is broken." I said, "No, it's not broken," because now on February 8th, he was getting at 100%. You see his graph, his focus. And so this is when we saw the NRF1, NRF2 beginning to kick in for this individual. So about a week later. Now, a few days after that, on February 10th, we took another reading. He was at 100%, but here's the issue. Because he was using this device, his average coherence went from 4.3 to 5.9. And we see this amazing graph here. Now, that's not the end of the story here. Other things that we measured in this, and over here on the left side, this is his emotional energy. On the right is his physical energy. And so we can see this top row here, we call that integral area. This is how well his body was producing the biophotonic energy. And they're both in the green where we want them. Down here, this line below is called integral entropy. And integral entropy means how well are you using the energy that your body is producing. So emotionally, he was doing very well, but physically, he was getting up here into the yellow, which kind of represented that prostate cancer that he was dealing with. Now, here's a very important piece down here in the bottom. We look at something called activation coefficient. And these are the things that we were looking at with Shauna and her group. But with this individual down here in the pink, it says that he is guarded. He's guarding the energy. And probably 95% of the people I measure, this is where they begin, is down here at this level. Now, here's the thing. When we took, after being on this 11 days, the energy up here had actually increased in his ability to generate biophotonic energy. And using that energy down here, emotionally, he was doing well, but physically, it had gone up a little bit right here. Now, it wasn't because of the cancer, it was because he was feeling so much better that he was actually walking 2 miles a day, 3 days a week, and going to the gym twice a week and working out. So he was expending more physical energy. But here's the point that I want to make right down here. His activation coefficient, if we go back here and we see this is where it was
Indeed.
before, then afterwards, he was up here in the green in the normal. He was able to handle stressors much easier.
That's fascinating. And can you tell us so exactly again what did happen during these 12 days? There is the device. So to understand
Right.
exactly,
He would use the device, clip it on his ear,
yes,
and he would use it twice a day, 5 to 10 minutes a day. But because his cells had been opened up and it was able to receive that information and energy in a more coherent fashion, that it was transmitting energy and information from cell to cell to cell. And that way he was being more resilient. He had more capacity to deal with stress. And this is one of the things that we saw in talking with Shauna on Friday, the things that we graphed with that group and their ability to handle stressors better, to get rid of the ancestral issues that were going on with them. And it was happening energetically and beginning to change that energy. So it was affecting them in a physical realm. And so it's interesting to look at some of these studies. Not only did I read the research about all of this, I was very engrossed in understanding these pathways and what we do. And as we get older, we begin to lose more of that capacity to deal with. And so these pathways get opened up, and then people are able to function more readily. Now, the reason that people would put this device on their ear is so that they could see, am I in high coherence, medium, or low coherence? Now, there's also a pattern that comes out when I'm working with people online that may have to do with their subconscious beliefs. Now, a
yes,
subconscious belief is only a thought we have over and over and over again that gets recorded in our subconscious.
like the internal dialogue we mentioned.
Right, exactly. The inner dialogue that we have. And part of that dialogue is our conscious brain. So it may be saying, let's use the law of attraction here a little bit. And so consciously, the person may be saying, I want more money, I want more money, I want more money. And then go down into the subconscious. The conscious mind is what executes the rules that we have. So it goes into the subconscious mind and says, okay, what about the money thing here? And the rule that is down there, where we got it growing up, or our perception about the world, or whatever it is. And maybe the rule that gets down there is you don't deserve more money. And
Indeed.
that's what it broadcasts out into the field through our energy. And so we're not attracting the things that we want to have happen. So you have two issues here. You have the brain and the body, you have the electromagnetic centers around the chakras, and you also have the electromagnetic center around the heart and the electromagnetic center around the brain. They all must work in harmony.
And to be aligned. This is what we call sometimes to align the three hearts, meaning there is the three brains, the brain of the heart, and the brain of the belly. That's
right. That's exactly right. And so it's about getting those in alignment. It's a little bit like if I asked you, Sophie, if I said, well, Sophie, tell me how your cholesterol feels today. You probably couldn't do that without a measurement.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so without measuring some of these things, we don't know where we are. And that's the reason for putting the device on the ear to see, where is my coherence? Am I high coherence, medium, or low? Am I thinking about things that are in my subconscious and just going through the motions? And like we talked about in the when we studied energy healing, how that actually works, what are the key components to that, and writing about it in the book and the results, people could see what that is. But these really have to work hand in hand. We have to be balanced. We'll get a better result. Will you get a result if you're not balanced? Yes, you will, but not as good a result. And so it's like she was explaining with the violin players when they are able to tap into that energy and that resource. Excuse me.
Indeed.
They're able to get into the flow of those things, and we begin to understand that that energy and that healing is a big resource if we will use it.
Indeed, indeed. And then this is really fascinating field. And again, so lucky we are to have you with us today to be able to understand a little bit more and to see the pictures are very, they talk a lot to the mind and the subconscious mind. And so you were talking about the device. So is the device that this is created by people like your team? Is it something which is available? How can
Yeah,
we do this?
yeah, it's available around the world.
Yes.
Excuse me, through HeartMath. And so what I do, because I'm a certified HeartMath trainer, if I'm working with somebody, and we will do two things. First of all, we will send them a test that has two parts to it. One is they poke their finger and put a couple of drops of blood on the card, send it into the lab. Then they will take a cognitive test online on their computer. And so then it will marry those two together, and we can see the relationship between their cellular function and their brain function. And that's very, very important. And then usually the second thing we do is get the HeartMath device introduced to them so they can use this really anytime. We have to learn how to do things. So when I was traveling around the world, and I did over 4,000 brain maps on people who meditate, then I had consultations with each of them as to what they were doing. We looked at their brain map to see how they were meditating, and I learned a couple of things. One, most people have no idea how to meditate, and secondly, there was that busyness in the back of their brain that kept them from doing good meditation. And so it was about how do you quiet that down. And when I went back to HeartMath and I talked to them about, that I was seeing these people all around the world, and we would talk about their autonomic nervous system, the energy going from the heart to the brain through the vagus nerve. And so the two parts of that is the sympathetic nervous system and then the parasympathetic nervous system. They had to be in balance. And that's the function of the HeartMath device. And so we would talk about that, and people would say, oh, yes, I have a HeartMath device, but I don't know what to do with it. So when I explained that to HeartMath, then they gave me a special dispensation, and I developed 6 different videos that I send to people that I'm working with, which explains different techniques in how to use this, so you can be in a difficult situation with somebody eyeball to eyeball, and use one of these 5 systems, and the person that you're dealing with has no idea that you're doing that. And so the military, the police force, other people, first responders, have been using these techniques for many, many, many years, several decades now, in being trained in how to utilize that to balance their sympathetic and their parasympathetic nervous system. So you need the device to kind of tell you where you are. It's not the device that's kicking in or making it work. It is you using that ability and focus and intention that we talked about within yourself, so that you know what that feels like when you're in coherence and when you are not in coherence. And that way you can allow yourself to just immediately go there, because that's what you're using with the device, is how to train your brain and your body to know what it feels like when you are out of coherence, when you're in anxiousness and overwhelm and frustration and anger. And how do I get from there back to feeling composed and whole and grounded.
Right. Yeah, and Dr. Fannin, I know you worked with very well-known people in the field of mindfulness. It's written on your website. We can see that you worked also with Dr. Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, and probably people who are less known but still meditators. And do you have yourself a meditation practice or a mindful practice?
Yes, I do. In fact, on my website, I talk about different elements of meditation. I personally subscribe to transcendental meditation because I can do it, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon or evening, and go deeper and accomplish the things that I want to. Now, offer a little tip to your audience here that when you're using transcendental meditation and you go through the training, they give you a mantra. And sometimes I will use the mantra and sometimes I don't. Now, you can get into this state here at home in my office. I have a massage chair, and that's where I usually do my meditation. Above the chair is a clock. And so as I'm sitting there and I'm not using the mantra, I can focus on the ticking of the clock. Tick, tick, tick. And as I focus on that, it's the same as focusing on a mantra, where we're using something that is nondescript, the ticking of a clock, where I can focus on the air coming through the air vent, because the air vent is just above the clock. Or I can focus on my breathing in and breathing out, and imagining that I'm breathing through my heart to activate that heart coherence. And we call that heart-focused breathing. And so as I do that, I'm going deeper and I'm balancing, bringing down the sympathetic nervous system and also bringing up the parasympathetic nervous system to be in balance. And that's the whole key is, how do I know when I'm in balance? Well, the device tells me when I'm in balance. And if people are having issues with staying in balance, that's why we look at their graphs like the ones I showed you, that I can see they're losing focus and concentration. They're doing their laundry list in their head, thinking about, well, I have to call this person, I have to take care of this, I have to drive to the dentist. That's what they're thinking about. And they don't realize that that's what they're doing. And so then they lose that focus and concentration. But the device helps you know when you are in high coherence, or if they have a subconscious belief pattern that is being triggered, I can see a different kind of a pattern. And then we talk about, how do you get rid of a subconscious belief pattern if you're not even aware that you're doing it? So what happens with that is, we have an experience, we put a meaning to that experience. Nothing in life has meaning except the meaning that we give it. And then there's some emotion, and that is bound together with a neurotransmitter that we call acetylcholine. And so, yes, acetylcholine.
Thank you.
And so that binds it together. It's kind of like when you hear a song and it takes you way back when, you have memories and feelings about that song. It's because it's activating that cognition. Now, when we use a second burst of acetylcholine, people want to get rid of that cognition and change it. When we look at our subconscious beliefs, we look at what is our behavior. If you want to know what's on your subconscious belief window, just look at your behaviors, because our behaviors are driven by that. So I'm doing this and I don't want to be doing that. I want to do this instead. So we have to know what we don't want in order to focus on what we do want. And then we have our free will to maintain that focus. So this device is helping us maintain the focus on what we do want while it's changing the neural patterns. And they say it takes, 21 days to create a new habit, which scientifically is very true, but it takes about 6 to 7 weeks to create this new neural pathway so that the new one fires rather than the old one. So that's why I work with people for about 8 weeks to help give that time enough for that pattern to develop. And so now they have a new neural pathway, and it's triggering what it is they do want rather than what they don't want.
Dr. Jeffrey, this is really fascinating. And when people want to reach you, on your website, they can take a 30-minute session, for example, with you, and then to organize, perhaps, if they want, to make an assessment with you.
Right.
Is it still possible to do it, with today this pandemic? And for example, actually, we are located in Europe, in France. Is it still possible to have not an interview, but let's say a session with you, perhaps to improve?
Oh, yeah.
People would like to reach you.
Yes, I work with people all over the world through the internet, and it's very possible to do that. I was looking for a better way in trying to do this as I traveled around the world doing all of this, unless people happen to be exactly where I was doing an event and doing brain maps, or they would come to Arizona and do that. But that's not always possible. So that's why we put together a program where I can work with people over the internet and send them the kits through the mail. We are also starting and implementing next week. People can go on and see this right now if they want, but we've been developing something called Thought University. And so we have a new site that we are building up, taking some of the best stuff from the thoughtgenius.com and putting it on thoughtuniversity.online. And so people can go there, they can see that, see a lot of the sciencey information, watch some of the videos, things like that, in order to understand what it is they need to do. And I can work with people anywhere in the world on doing this. And that's because we are energetic beings living in a vibrational universe. So I think
Indeed,
that's
this is
an
so.
important issue to distinguish here.
Indeed, this is so true and so wise. And thank you. And I guess we can have also news about so your new program within the next weeks that people can also reach. And I will look forward to learn more about that. And Dr. Jeffrey Fannin, you mentioned your book, so also for the people, our audience present right now, and people who will watch your replay because of the time zone and the possibilities of today. Don't hesitate to click on the bio of Dr. Jeffrey Fannin on the website healingthefamilytree.com, and you will be able to see all the links that you can reach Dr. Fannin on. It can be Instagram, Dr. Brain Fitness, also your website, thogenius.com. That's put on, also available here in the chat. Also the book, Commanding the Power of Thought, Becoming Genius. So there is the link that you can also check about the book. And there are many resources on your website that are very interesting and fascinating. Dr. Fannin, can I ask you a question that I had from someone during the lunchtime? We were talking about, the children that we call high potential, and that they sometimes feel pretty weird in our world, not knowing if they are normal or not normal. It's not. It's getting better and better, the perception of the difference we do have all, because we are all unique beings, right, with a uniqueness. But for these children and the parents, do you have any, any thought, any advice to share with us?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Sophie. And when we're looking at what people call the indigo children, and they do feel very different. We're talking about people who work with their third eye, the indigo, and that's where that comes from. And so they are more in tune with everything that's going on outside of them, because they are pulling that in through their third eye and using more of their intuition. So a couple of years ago, I was in a film called PGS, Your Personal Guidance System Intuition. So I'm the neuroscientist in the film, and you can find that on Vimeo, I think, still. And helping people understand intuition. How does intuition actually work? And so when we talk about these children who that's one of their primary representation systems. Oops, what happened here?
You with us.
Yeah,
We can,
all right.
we can hear you and see you.
Okay, I just can't see you.
Oh,
Slides up. There we go. All right, now I'm back. It all of a sudden jumped to the slides I was showing you, and that's all I could see on my side. But anyway, it's a difficult proposition with parents to be able to accept that maybe their child has some special gifts. And we've heard about this for years, where children may seem to have an invisible playmate. And
yes.
because they have no filters, and if they're working through their third eye, they're not very invisible to the child. They are tapped into this other paradigm of energy and are dealing with that. And so these supposed make-believe friends that they are tapped into energy, information, and knowledge that is coming down through their thalamic gate into the thalamus and through the third eye, and they're able to distinguish. So they function much differently than most people. So the advice I would be giving them is make sure that they allow their child to be stimulated in the way that they would like to be, to keep stimulated, to not necessarily say, oh, well, that's imaginary, don't believe that. The child
To not
has no
deny.
filters. They have no filters to filter that out. And as adults, we have learned to filter out and get rid of many of the things that the world has told us, well, you don't do this and you shouldn't do that and that sort of thing. So we put those filters in there, but the child does not necessarily have those filters. Parents need to involve creativity and understanding and logic and learning for the child to help keep them stimulated so that they form a good perception that the world is a friendly place, that these energies and things existed. When I was growing up, people had never heard of that, but science is building that bridge between science and spirituality now, and technology has helped us understand more of that. And if a parent is not acquainted with some of this stuff, they can go online, they can research these things, begin to understand, if they don't have the capability themselves, but to understand what their child is dealing with, and open up and allow better learning, better creativity, better imagination. And it was Albert Einstein said that one of the most powerful things in the universe is imagination. And so allowing that imagination to come forward with intention and with focus, and being able to find who they are as an individual when they have special gifts.
Yeah, thank you so much for this answer. And indeed, there are so many resources online. Sometimes we don't know which one will be the most relevant to learn about, because there's so many ways and so many layers, from the most left brain to the most, let's say, spiritual one, and people, so that we can think about it. How do we resonate with information we do receive, and then that we can also then pay attention to our child and implement into our education perhaps new ways that we may have not received. Because if this is for sure that a couple of decades before, we did not speak about the children the way we do speak about them today, and these capacities and the abilities. So it's something very not new at our let's say, for the last 20 years. But if we take only 30 years, it was not so common to speak about these capacities, let's say, abilities of children, specificities.
Right. And I think we have to understand that we are entering a new era.
Yeah.
That ever since 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar, and I very often get asked that question, why is it that we're seeing a change now? Well, the vibrations have been lifting in the universe. And if you look at pictures of the universe from the Hubble telescope, and we see that spiral spinning around, and it's taken this many years for the vibrations to change, and we've seen a rise in the Schumann resonance, or the vibration of the Earth, that is typically 7.83 and has been for many, many years. And now it fluctuates depending on the vibration of things that are going on. More people are understanding this and are beginning to understand that we are different. And I think the COVID situation around the world has caused many of us to be isolated with ourselves and our family. And so we're beginning to look at ourselves. Who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? And there's so much uncertainty in the world. And we're watching old systems, old paradigms break down, and new ones are developing. And so the energy is happening more rapidly with every individual. And we're also, I've noticed this, that it seems like time is going faster, doesn't it?
And
Yeah,
we can relate on that.
yeah,
Indeed.
every day it's like, how did it get to be 4 o'clock in the afternoon all of a sudden? You know,
Indeed.
but it
Well,
is, time is going faster. We are vibrating faster. People are more aware. They are more tapped into the universe than ever. So every couple of weeks, when we get the certified trainers from HeartMath, and they're talking from around the world about the clients they're working with, and we are seeing this new era unfold right before our eyes, and the old systems crumbling. And things are changing here in the United States, in our political system, and a lot of different things. So we're seeing many changes that are occurring, which can be very unsettling for people. But if you realize that you are a vibrational being living in that vibrational universe, and trusting and focusing on the good things that are there, and that we are coming into a new era, and believing in the new era and exploring the new era, I think people will find that they will fare better in this new era.
yes, indeed. And someday I read this quote from Francesco Di Cassi, who says, "You cannot have wings before you have roots." And I like what you say, that we have a chance with also science, and you are neuroscientist and having an amazing experience, that we can learn how to know ourselves better. And then it can also allow us to explore even more the new era, as you mentioned. And I like very much that you do mention also mindfulness and meditation, because it is also a way to come back to inside, to us. We have so many things that can capture our attention, medias and technologies, and sometimes just a breathing, as you mentioned, can bring us back inside of us, and then we can get more ready for the new exploration.
Right. And you mentioned something very important there, Sophie, and that is uh, going inside of ourselves. But we need to be present in the moment. So even if in that moment it is chaos, we need to be aware of what we're focused on. Are we focusing in the moment on the things that we need to? Are we willing to make the changes and explore this new era that we're going into?
Yeah, this is a balance between being very present in the moment and allowing us also to have a trajectory.
Right.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Jeffrey Fannin. I wish people you do enjoy the conversation. I'm checking, so I see in the discussion if we do have questions, and I know that many questions will come from the replay because of, again, what time is it for you actually, Dr. Fannin? Tell me again.
It's almost 9 o'clock here, 3 minutes before.
Almost. Oh yes, almost 9 o'clock. Thank you so much that you dedicated this time with us today. And I look forward to continue the conversation with you, perhaps on another summit, another event. And I encourage and I invite people to visit your website. You will be seeing tons of incredible informations and also tools to learn more how our brain is related to our reality.
Thank you very much, Sophie.
Thank you very much to you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Take care of you. Bye bye. À
Bye.
bientôt.